I actually like Dick Cheney for real. I get on with him. I think he's a decent man.
Hi, you must be from the Biden campaign. Why, yes, I'm Gunther Biden. How'd you know? Oh, just a hunch. Wait, are you related to Joe Biden? Oh no, just a fan. Alright, well, as you may know, we here at Goldman Hacks have millions of dollars to donate. No strings attached, of course. We are just kind-hearted people with zero intention of furthering our personal or professional lives. But before backing any campaign, we carefully review each candidate for potential elephants. Elephants? Yes, metaphorical elephants in physical form. Still better than Game of Thrones. We like to have fun here. So let's start out with general elephants and then move on to chronological elephants, shall we? Okay. So what do you say to those concerned that Joe, as a political insider for 50 years, isn't the right fit to lead the Democratic Party in 2020? Well, that there sounds like ageism with an extra dose of ism. I call that experience. But since Joe's been planning to run for president since he was in college, if he runs a third time, won't he seem entitled like Hillary Clinton? Nope, because Uncle Joe is a likable white man. Fair enough. So, what's up with the weird touching? Uncle Joe's been very clear about this.
I'm sorry I didn't understand more. I'm not sorry for any of my intentions. I'm not sorry for anything that I have ever done.
Also, he's ready to joke about it whenever you are.
The VP seemed to make light of the allegations.
I had permission to hug Lonnie. By the way, he gave me permission to touch him.
Ooh, compulsively invading personal space for decades and then not taking it seriously is tight. So, Joe spent most of his career representing Delaware, a state where companies incorporate to avoid taxes. Hasn't Joe shown a long pattern of being too close to Wall Street? Hey now, you're making it seem like Uncle Joe got handsy with corporate interests.
According to the New York Times, the credit card issuer, MBNA, was Biden's top donor from 1989 to 2010.
Your son being hired right out of law school by a big company here in Delaware that is in the credit card business, MBNA. He got about $100,000 a year, as I recall.
You know, Joe Biden nobody really ever thought of him as a liberal. They are close to the credit card industry, for example. They're jokingly referred to as the senators from MBNA at times.
Okay, so Joe got a little handsy with corporate interests, but he was simply helping his state over his country. And isn't that basically the job of a senator? You're making it seem like Uncle Joe sold access to the highest bidder.
The more money the sub-captains raised, the more access to Biden their captain received. If one of them wanted to see Biden, he needed to donate at least $1,000. Connaughton would tell the big-time donors, for $50,000, I can get you dinner with the senator at his house. For $25,000, I can get you dinner with the senator, but not at his house.
Okay, so Uncle Joe sold access to the highest bidder, but you know who else took corporate donations? This guy. Oh my God, I miss Obama so much. All right, so let's move on to chronological elephants now, shall we? How many elephants? So in 1975, Biden opposed Democrats and led efforts against school busing to counteract segregation. Uncle Joe said many times that busing was a liberal train wreck. Actually, research has since shown that school busing was successful at both creating equity for minorities and pissing off white people. Exactly. Uncle Joe is getting tons of complaints, and what was he supposed to do? Ignore them and lose re-election? Besides, could a white enabler be best friends with this guy? Can't argue with that. So in 1982, Joe supported the Hatch Amendment, which would have allowed Republican states to ban abortion. And he also said, quote, I don't like the Supreme Court decision on abortion. I think it went too far. I don't think that a woman has the sole right to say what should happen to her body. Well, as a Catholic, Uncle Joe believes that life begins at conception, and thus abortion is murder. However, he's evolved and nevertheless believes in a woman's right to choose. Oh, so does he still oppose federal abortion funding to help poor women? Well, yes, but he's evolving. And you know who else had to evolve? this brother from another mother. That's true. Now, we obviously have to talk about the Anita Hill hearing. Yes, and Uncle Joe has said that, quote, he feels really badly that Anita Hill didn't feel like the process worked for her. But as chairman at the time, wasn't it literally Biden's job to make the process work? Okay, look. Uncle Joe regrets doing absolutely nothing to help Anita Hill. He regrets prohibiting 3 other women from corroborating her testimony. And he regrets that these actions allowed Clarence Thomas to become one of the worst Supreme Court justices in modern history. But, to be fair, Uncle Joe did pinky swear a Republican colleague in the Senate gym that he'd make the confirmation hearing speedy, so that really changes everything. Ooh, lazy backroom dealing that puts a conservative on the Supreme Court is tight. So, Joe supported the Reagan War on Drugs in 1984, 1986, and 1988. And then he sponsored the 1994 Crime Bill, all of which contributed to problems like mass incarceration. Okay, look, they used to say,
Crack, you never go back.
And because it rhymed, everyone believed them. But now Uncle Joe realizes that rich and poor drug users deserve to go to jail equally. And besides, Uncle Joe's already apologized for his relatively minor role in America's war on crime and drugs.
I had spent years writing what became known as the Biden crime bill. The Biden crime bill. Biden crime bill.
The Biden-Hatch crime bill, as it becomes law, God willing, I hope that we will have ended this notion that somehow Democrats are weak on crime. The truth is, every major crime bill, every minor crime bill, has had the name of the Democratic senator from the state of Delaware, Joe Biden, on that bill.
The Biden crime bill. The Biden crime bill.
The Biden crime bill.
The Biden crime bill. The Biden crime bill. The Biden crime bill.
The Biden crime bill is before us, calls for the death penalty for 51 offenses. I like the idea they keep in jail longer. I'm the guy that wrote the bill requiring federal judges to keep people in jail 100% of the time.
Bobby Rush, member of Congress, said the other day, I'm ashamed that I voted for the 94 crime bill. You ashamed of that bill?
Not at all. In fact, I drafted the bill.
Regardless, I think everyone knows that when it comes to social justice policy, Uncle Joe is just a plagiarized copy of this guy. Oh, wait, no, there's Joe eating ice cream. Plagiarized copy of this guy. Well, as a white man, that's good enough for me. But what about in 1996 when Joe supported a conservative overhaul of the federal welfare system? How could Uncle Joe have known that significantly cutting welfare benefits would lead to a sharp increase in poverty and homelessness?
This bill is an abdication of our responsibility and an abandonment of our morality. How can any person of faith, of conscience, vote for a bill that will put 1 million more kids into poverty? This bill is mean, it is base, it is downright low down.
Also, Uncle Joe is sorry, but you can trust now that America's social safety net is safe in his hands.
Paul Ryan was correct. When he did the tax code, what's the first thing he decided we had to go after? Social Security and Medicare.
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing.
Nevertheless, in 2020...
I'm an Obama-Biden Democrat, man.
Fair enough. So how do you explain Joe's support for financial deregulation?
Not only is Biden a neighbor to wealthy and powerful company titans and DuPont family members, he's thrown his weight behind issues and legislation that benefited Delaware's big banking interests.
Joe Biden is just as complicit and implicated in the deregulation of finance and the financialization of the economy as Clinton, if not more so. I mean, he's the senator from Delaware, right?
Well, now, it's easy to throw elephants, but how could Uncle Joe have known that allowing finance companies to regulate themselves would lead to an economic crisis?
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this bill. It will lead to fewer banks, increased charges and fees, and taxpayer exposure to potential losses should a financial conglomerate fail. This bill is, in fact, however, good for big banks.
Okay, but remember who let us out of that 2008 crisis? These guys can't argue with that. So what about the Patriot Act? You can't blame Uncle Joe for giving President Bush extraordinary powers after 9/11. I mean, don't you want your representatives to overreact to a crisis like their constituents? I guess that makes sense, but aren't you concerned that Joe is the only 2020 candidate who voted for the Iraq War? Uncle Joe has already apologized 1,000,000 times for supporting the war in Iraq. What else do you want him to do? Build a time machine, go back a couple of months, and not run for president while acknowledging his role in helping cause many of the problems that we're now facing? I mean, come on! Ooh, following ambition over introspection is tight. And to be fair, President Bush did such a swell job in Afghanistan that Uncle Joe was completely blindsided by his incompetence in Iraq.
President Bush did not lash out precipitously at Iraq after 9/11. At each pivotal moment, he has chosen a course of moderation and deliberation, and I believe he will continue to do so.
Let's stay with Iraq. As you've said, your vote was a mistake.
I vastly underestimated, George, the incompetence of this administration. I'm not being facetious. No, I really mean it. Folks, remember, they did it pretty well in Afghanistan. They acted responsibly. And when he came forward with this plan for Iraq, we assumed he'd act equally as responsibly.
I mean, who could have seen that coming? Well, Joe was in charge of the Senate Foreign Intelligence Committee, so wouldn't that make it his job? Also, I vaguely remember the war in Afghanistan being a monumental disaster.
We are now fighting an intractable war only to establish a corrupt, undemocratic state.
Really? America is having a hard time fighting in Afghanistan. How could that be?
Okay, but remember who got us out of those wars? These guys! Can't argue with that. So what about the 2005 Bankruptcy Bill that credit card companies spent $100 million lobbying for?
You were fighting for a bankruptcy bill that MBNA really wanted to get passed through the Senate, making it much tougher for everyone to file bankruptcy. Senator Obama was opposed to the bill. You voted against an amendment that would call for a warning on predatory lending. You opposed efforts to strengthen the protection of people in bankruptcy. In retrospect, wasn't it inappropriate for someone like you, in the middle of all this, to have your son collecting money from this big credit card company while you were on the floor protecting its interest?
Absolutely not.
Your problem with the credit card companies is usury rates from your position. It's not about the bankruptcy bill.
But, Senator, if you're not going to fix that problem, you can't take away the last shred of protection for these families.
Okay. You're very good, Professor.
Despite saying that it would lead to lower prices for consumers, studies show that prices continued to rise while corporate profits exploded. Well, there's a simple explanation. Oh no! Oh shucks, look at the time. Well, I'm sure you were almost out of elephants anyway. Oh yeah, there weren't too many left. Just Joe's support for the Defense of Marriage Act, the TPP, Energy Policy Act, Balanced Budget Amendment, his unsolicited defense of the wealthy.
We have not seen this huge concentration of wealth. And the folks at the top aren't bad guys. I don't think 500 billionaires are the reason why we're in trouble.
Both Reagan tax cuts, the No Child Left Behind Act, telecom deregulation, and his general propensity for gaffes.
I have the most progressive record of anybody running for the if anybody who would run.
Happens to be, as Barack says, a three-letter word: jobs. J-O-B-S. Jobs.
I think I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect, and I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
Oh, good. So, what do you think of Uncle Joe? Well, is it possible that even if he genuinely strived to do what he thought was right, Joe Biden's likability has clouded the fact that he's a textbook political insider, desperate to become president, whose actual legacy is that of a career politician protecting the status quo in a manner distinctly reminiscent of Hillary Clinton? Malarkey! Uncle Joe is clearly the best candidate, and here's why. Because Uncle Joe is folksy and experienced? Because Uncle Joe is folksy and experienced. Fair enough. I'm sure it would be fine so long as there's no way to demonstrate that his long pattern of mistakes was clearly avoidable. What do you mean? Well, for example, if there was another candidate who served in Congress with Joe for an extended period of time while voting the opposite way on all of these disturbing elephant issues. Heavens to Betsy! That clearly proved that Uncle Joe has terrible judgment and automatically disqualify him as the best candidate in 2020. Hey, I'm Leo Ashe. If you like this video, please subscribe and comment below on what I should cover next. Also, check out my website for a comprehensive list of Joe Biden's questionable judgment over the years. And until next time, stay angry. Hi, does your law firm do name changes? I'd like to change my last name to Buttigieg.